Hi, I'm Debbie Harbeck, and I'm a certified life coach working with women in midlife and through the menopause transition. So each week, I'll be sharing the latest information, inspiration, and generate some momentum so you can move forward and feel more in control of your changing midlife body and your life. Let's go. Hi, and welcome back to the podcast today. And today it's about something personal because if you've been listening to this podcast for a little while, you'll probably know that I've been waiting for hip replacement surgery. So in less than a week, it's happening on May the 5th. And I finally got the call last Friday that it was finally my turn. And so, Tuesday, May the 5th, that's the date. And it's not something new that I just decided I was going to do. It's been almost 4 years since I first started having hip pain, and now here we are. And I'm ready for it. But if you had asked me 4 years ago, I think it would be a pretty extreme solution and that I was probably too young for that. And that's why I want to do this episode today, because many of us are already suffering with osteoarthritis and other things, and we're not too young. So I'll start at the beginning of my own story with this. It happened when I was out for a weekend run with my running buddies almost 4 years ago, and I felt a sudden sharp pain in my groin, in my left groin. It wasn't a little discomfort or like a little twinge, but it was a sharp and very specific pain, and it made me stop and walk. But if you're anything like me, you're used to little things like that. I've had bursitis, tendonitis, stress fractures, strains, sprains. I've had a bunch of things because I've been a swimmer, I've been a runner. These things are painful, but they eventually get better, not worse. So I thought if I just went home, stretched it out, took a couple days off, I would be able to move on. Except it didn't go away. It would come back on runs. And then it started showing up in other moments too. And after a couple of months of this pattern, I finally thought, okay, I should probably get this checked out. So I went to my doctor, I had an x-ray done, and that's when things shifted because it showed I had severe osteoarthritis in my left hip. And you don't want to hear that. You don't want to hear you have severe arthritis, right? Because I didn't feel like it was severe. I was still active. I was still working out. I was still more or less doing my thing. And the truth is we all have joint degeneration by this age. And some of it isn't painful at all, and therefore nothing needs to be done in those cases. But mine was painful. So from there, I did what most people do. I tried everything. I did physio, I saw an osteopath, I got a cortisone shot, which, by the way, helped for only about 1 week. And I doubled down on the things I knew would help me, which were strength training at the gym, doing the things I could do, and interestingly, I went back to swimming, something I hadn't done for almost 30 years. And that actually became one of the things that felt the best in my body. But even with all of that, the underlying issue didn't change. It was actually getting worse. I was having more pain, less mobility. Walking was becoming much more challenging, and a full night's of interrupted sleep hasn't happened in years. So that's why early last year in 2025, when I'd exhausted all the other options, I was recommended for a full hip replacement, and I got an appointment with a surgeon in June. So it was scary at that time to hear that was where I was. Like I needed a major surgery to feel better. But after years of being in pain, of not sleeping well, I just felt I was ready to face it. So once I saw the surgeon, they told me the surgery would only happen in 6 to 12 months. And that when they would call me, I'd have to be ready to go. So it was hard to hear that I'd have to wait for that amount of time because I had already been a couple of years by that point that I was in pain. And it was harder to know that I'd have to put things on hold, like traveling and just planning anything in advance, really. And over all this time, the questions started coming, not just from me, but from other people around me too. And I get it because these are the same questions I had. So, what I want to do on this episode today is address these questions here because you might be wondering if that pain you have is osteoarthritis and what you could do about it. And that's the first question I always get is what does the pain actually feel like? So I'll say at first it's not constant. And that's the part that makes it confusing. Sometimes it's a sharp pinch in the front of my hip or my groin. And other times it's like a deep ache in my butt. It's particularly painful at night. It wakes me up. For me, one of the biggest signs has been a loss of range of motion. Things like putting on socks, getting out of the car, movements you don't think about until they start feeling restricted. That's when you really notice there's something going on. And then, of course, continuing to teach yoga has become too much. I stopped doing that in December. So I'll say it can be a long, gradual shift leading to more pain and less range of motion. And then that usually begs the next question, what caused it? And this is a big one. And the honest to God answer is there isn't always one clear cause. It can be a mix of things, genetics, joint structure, years of repetitive movement, excess weight, and more. And for a lot of active women, especially midlife, it's not that you did something wrong. It's often just a gradual wearing down over time. And I've been through that, asking myself what I did wrong, but I realize it's one of those things you don't always have control over. So, despite living healthfully and not carrying excess weight, it happened at 49, and that's where I was stuck on this next question was, isn't it too young for hip replacement? I'm 53 now, and I feel like it's too young, and this comes up a lot from other people. And the data actually says otherwise because hip replacements are being done much earlier than they used to be, largely because the outcomes are so good. Most modern hip replacements can last for 30 years and sometimes longer. So, yes, there's a possibility I might need another one down the road. But here's how I look at it quality of life matters now. Living with ongoing pain, modifying everything I do, constantly thinking about my body and all the limitations, that has a cost too. And I wasn't willing to keep shrinking my life around this problem. So here I am at 53, embracing this surgery and hoping it pays me back in decades of movement and less pain for that hip, anyways, of course. And then there's the question I get about what I'll be able to do once this is done. Like, will I be able to run again? And the very hopeful answer is yes. Although I found new ways to be active and I enjoy moving without running, I'd still love to run again. I'd love to finish a triathlon. All I can say is watch me. And if I run again, great. If I don't, I'm still going to be strong, capable, and active. And probably in a lot less pain, which will be amazing because a good night's sleep sounds even better right now than being able to run. So as I head into surgery next week, I'm in a place of, I'd say, acceptance, but also a lot of trust, not just in the procedure, but in my body's ability to recover. Because if there's one thing I've learned, both personally and through coaching, it's that our bodies are incredibly resilient when we support them well. And this experience has also given me a deeper understanding of something I talk about all the time. Just because something looks fine on the outside doesn't mean everything feels fine on the inside. A lot of us are walking around with discomfort, pain, limitations, and we're just pushing through. And I know sometimes that's what's called for, but a lot of the time it's worth pausing and asking, what do I actually need here? And for me, surgery was the final answer, not because I gave up on all the other options, but because I explored them fully. And this is what makes sense now. So, over the next few weeks, I'll probably share a bit more about the recovery side of things too, like what it's like, what's working, what's challenging, because I know I'm not the only one navigating something like this. And if you're dealing with your own version of this, whether it's an injury, a limitation, or just a body that is changing in midlife, you are not alone in that. And there are always options. Sometimes they just look different than what we expected. And of course, if you need someone to talk to about coping with pain or discomfort or just getting through where you're finding yourself right now, please don't hesitate to reach out. I'm here. I would love to talk to you. And in the meantime, I will probably not be on for another couple of weeks, but when I do come on, I will be sharing with you all that I have learned. So I'm wishing you a fantastic couple of weeks. Enjoy the spring and keep moving forward. Bye for now. Thanks for listening to this episode of the Midlife Momentum Podcast. If you want to learn more about working with me, come visit me at debbieharbeckcoaching.com. That's Debbie, I-E, Harbeck with a C, coaching.com. See you next week.